You're listening to Goldbach Career, your podcast for sorting things out. Today we'll be talking about Stoicism. Yes, you might have heard about this term before, or even have a general idea of what it is. We'll be going through an introduction or a beginner's guide to the philosophy of Stoicism, which is unique and unlike any other in the world. So stay tuned until the very end, as this could change your life perspective for the better. Almost 2,000 years have passed, and it still remains relevant in today's age. Today, we colloquially use the word Stoic to mean someone who faces pain or hardship without the display of feeling and without complaint. Someone who remains calm under pressure, avoiding emotional extremes. While this notion is important to Stoicism, the philosophy goes beyond just an attitude. Stoicism was founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium. The school taught that the path to happiness for humans is found in accepting the moment as it presents itself, without being manipulated by pleasure or pain, and justly. The name Stoicism derives from the ancient Greek words stoa, poiko, or painted porch, a colonnade where Zeno and his students gathered to discuss Stoicism. As Zeno couldn't afford a building such as Plato's Academy, his followers gathered under the shade of the porch in the marketplace, where anyone could listen to his teachings and join the debate. The Stoics often refer to four fundamental virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. We have control over how we approach things. Rather than imagining a perfect world, a utopia, the Stoic practices realism and deals with the world as it is, while pursuing one's personal development through the four fundamental virtues. Wisdom: understanding the world without prejudice, logically and calmly. Courage: facing daily challenges and struggles with no complaints. Justice: treating others fairly even when they have done wrong. And temperance, which is voluntary self-restraint or moderation, where an individual refrains from doing something by sheer willpower. People who cultivate these virtues can bring positive change in themselves and in others. Throughout history, Stoicism has been practiced by the royalty, presidents, philosophers, writers, entrepreneurs, and much more. However, there are three main historical Stoic practitioners. The first one is Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire and most powerful man on earth in the year 161 to 180, where he wrote on a daily basis in his personal journal as a source for his own guidance and self-improvement. These notes would later become known as the Meditations, perhaps the only document of its kind ever made, the private thoughts of the world's most powerful man. However, he did not make any of his writing public. Luckily, most of his writing was found and is now available for readers all over the world. You can find a link in the description to the digital version, which is in public domain. Then we have Epictetus. He wrote that we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. This resonates with modern psychology and the self-help movement. And last of all, we have Seneca, philosopher and writer, who was ordered to suicide by Roman Emperor Nero, at which time he could only think of comforting his wife and friends. We will be mentioning these three important figures in our introduction to Stoicism. The Stoics don't concern themselves with complex theories about life. They are focused on helping us overcome destructive emotions and act on what can be acted upon. It is not merely an intellectual philosophical point of view built for debate, it is a pragmatic philosophy built for action. So let's go through some of the most important Stoic teachings we can implement in our daily lives. Even though these three radically different men led radically different lives, they seem to have one habit in common: journaling. Epictetus would write down day by day in order to exercise himself. Seneca would examine his entire day and the night and go over everything he had done and said, finding this self-examination incredibly satisfying to end his day. And then, of course, we have Marcus, whose writings, appropriately titled To Himself, now survive and are known as the Meditations. The art of journaling is more than a simple diary. It is the underlying psychology preparing for the day and reflecting on the day, reminding oneself of the wisdom achieved from people, readings, and experiences. In some sense, the journal is the life book, which is practiced over and over. Developing yourself is a lifelong process. Working on your inner self should be prioritized and not postponed for other tasks. Identify your flaws and work on them. You can learn a new skill, read and gain more knowledge, exercise, meditate, and much more, all for the purpose of enriching your own life. A man with white hair and wrinkles hasn't lived long, he has just existed for long. Most of the time, we aren't actually living, but merely existing. Our time is a non-renewable source, and we mustn't get addicted with things that brings us short-term pleasures. Your time is valuable, and it is the only thing that you cannot ever get back. Life can be and is fulfilling if you invest your time in what actually matters, working towards goals that are important to you, and not indulging in short-term pleasures that will just act as an obstacle and get you further away from your goal. Talking about short-term pleasures, remember that it's all ephemeral. Here's a short reflection made by Marcus Aurelius. Run down the list of those who felt intense anger at something. The most famous, the most unfortunate, the most hated, the most whatever. Where is all that now? Smoke, dust, legend, or not even a legend. Think of all the examples and how trivial the things we want so passionately are. In short, for Stoics, what matters is what you do now, in the present. Be humble, honest, and aware. Let's go through a short story. Alexander the Great, who conquered the world and became one of the most powerful men to ever walk the earth. He had cities named in his honor. However, one day, while having a little too much to drink, he got into a fight with one of his friends and accidentally killed him. Onward, he was so miserable that he was unable to ingest food or drink for a few days. The morale is that no matter how powerful you are, hurting those around you will make you miserable. That is why you should be humble, honest, and aware. That is something you will never have to fear someone taking from you. Practice negative visualization. Contemplate the loss of whatever you love in life. This makes you value life more, making some of your current worries pointless, thus transforming your outlook on life, realizing how thankful you should be. Imagining things that could go wrong helps us prepare for life's inevitable setbacks. It is one of the most powerful exercises in the Stoics' toolkit to build resilience and strength. Practice misfortune. Negative visualization goes hand in hand of another important exercise, practicing misfortune. In Marcus's Meditations, he stressed that to Stoics, there aren't really good or bad fortunes in the world. What happens is simply what happened. This doesn't mean that we should think about it, but rather live with the inevitable nature of it. The inability to exercise misfortune will lead to a much more devastating effect once it actually happens, since you won't be expecting the inevitable. Training perception to avoid good and bad. If you're trying to help someone and they reply negatively, instead of succumbing to their trap or making your life more difficult, you should think of it as an opportunity to direct yourself towards new virtues, such as patience or understanding. The Stoic tries to convert every tragedy or obstacle into an opportunity. Memento Mori. Does Memento Mori ring any bells? You might have heard of it. It is actually a common Stoic practice, meaning meditate on your mortality. As Seneca said, let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing, let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on the life each day is never short of time. It basically reflects on the suddenness of mortality. In his meditations, Marcus wrote that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is to say, that life should be lived to the fullest at present, and not waiting until the end. Seneca also mentioned that we mustn't be fearful of the future and worry about the past, since the latter doesn't concern me and the former concerns me not yet. Fearing the future will only bring dread and suffering. The next time something horrible happens, say to yourself, perhaps this sorrow might one day bring delight. Reflect on our past, learn the lessons, and move on. Mortality is a depressing thought for many. However, the Stoics find it humbling. Seneca urged us to tell ourselves that you may not wake up tomorrow when going to sleep, and you may not sleep again when waking up. Let this be the building block of living your life to the fullest. One of the most important practices in Stoic philosophy is knowing what is under our control, what we can change and what we can't, what we have influence over and what we do not. We should distinguish things in which we have no control over. A flight is delayed because of bad weather. Yelling and shouting will not end a storm. If you cannot do anything about a situation, it is pointless to worry. As Marcus Aurelius said, nothing is worth doing pointlessly. Try to question if something is within your control or not. Journal and reflect on it. If you can focus on the parts of your day within your control, you will have a great advantage over other people who fail to realize that they are fighting an unwinnable imaginary battle. Amor Fati. Love everything that happens. As Marcus would say, a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. The Stoics embrace this attitude, making the best of anything that happens and treating every moment, no matter how challenging, as something to be embraced, not avoided. So that like oxygen to a fire, obstacles and adversity become the fuel for your potential. Obstacles give you the opportunity to strengthen yourself to overcome future adversities and hurdles, growing stronger and wiser as a person. Stoicism is based on giving you tips and aids for living a good life, becoming better as a person, better at facing problems, and ultimately happier. Create your own philosophy. We spend too much time being around people who tell us what to believe, how you should act, and what to do with your time. It is up to us to decide to protect ourselves from the influence of the masses. If most people do something, that doesn't mean that it is the right path. Smoking, drinking, and gambling, those are popular, but is it the right path? Be a student of the greatest subject of all, life itself. To quickly recap this introduction to Stoicism, these are the main points. Start journaling. Make it your life book. Develop yourself. It is a lifelong process. Life is ephemeral. Focus on what really matters. Practice negative visualization. Makes you value life more. Practice misfortune. Makes you well equipped in the face of tragedy. Train perception. Turn bad into good. Memento Mori. Meditate on your mortality. Know what is under your control. Ignore what is not. Amor Fati. Love everything that happens. And last but not least, create your own philosophy. Be a student of life. Be sure to share these Stoic teachings with your friends and family. Please subscribe, like, or give this podcast a follow. It helps me to keep producing great content to help you sort things out. Until next time.